Welcome to the Peakday podcast, where we talk about fertility and natural family planning with our friends. My guest today is Betsy Hoyt. Betsy is a certified personal trainer as well as a hormone and nutrition coach who's worked in the wellness industry for almost 20 years. As a lifelong Catholic and retired homeschool mom with more than 20 certifications, including FEM Educator and Piatra Fitness Pro Instructor, to name a few, she has worked with women of all ages throughout the U.S., revealing true, sustainable wellness in realistic ways through her integrated Catholic woman practice. Welcome, Betsy, to the Peakday podcast.
Thank you so much, Martha, for having me.
I'm very excited to be talking with you. You just have a wealth of knowledge as far as fitness and nutrition and women's health, and I'm excited to dive right in.
Yeah, me too.
So, Betsy, what was your path to the wellness industry?
Well, gosh, I am originally from Southern California. You can take the girl out of California, but you can't take California out of the girl. So I did grow up with some pretty good wellness habits. Although I will say that as I got older, got married, started a family with my husband, and we began homeschooling. And as a Catholic homeschooler, my story, I think some people are going to maybe identify with this, but I just know that for my story, I found myself pouring myself into this role of wife, mother, and teacher. And those are all beautiful and good things. However, my distortion of thinking or my disordered thinking was that my wellness didn't matter. I was to just suck it up, buttercup, and just do the things, and I can take care of those other things later. And I found myself at a certain time in my life where, my oldest son, Curtis, had been in a really bad skateboarding accident and had broken his jaw. He hit the ground so hard that he hit the ground so hard on one side that he broke his jaw, blew it out on the other side. He had an extensive surgery to wire his jaw shut. And while he was convalescing, I had this moment where I just felt like, and maybe some of the moms out there with little kids can identify with this. I felt like a squeezed juice box. Like the kids get the Capri Sun and they like wring it. I felt like everything had just been wrung out of me. And I thought to myself, this isn't right. Like, what's happened? I used to be, so, fit and this and that and feel so good, but I feel so, And I turned back around. I call it the epiphany on the stairs. I turned back around. I went right back up to my bedroom. I shut the door and I really did. I cried out to God and I said, I don't know what's happening. I don't understand what I'm supposed to do. And it was from there that I discovered that how important it was for me to take care of my own health. I'm reminded of, what they say on an airplane, you put your mask on first so you can help the person next to you. And I really would encourage women, especially mothers, wives, women maybe that aren't biological moms yet, who are just working. We're pouring ourselves out constantly for other things and other people, and we're forgetting about putting our mask on first. And so the Lord really used that moment in my time and in my story to really send me on a different trajectory. And that's when I really got involved in fitness. And so my fitness journey really started with my own journey to integrated wellness. And that my wellness just wasn't my physical wellness and my nutrition and my hormones, but it was my spiritual wellness. Did I have a personal relationship with the Lord? Did I have a daily prayer life? Was I making an examen and a resolution every day? Or was I just kind of skating and just like hoping, to just scrape the dregs off the bottom of the bag, and just be okay with that? And so, so that, there's just so many other nuances to that. But I mean, in a
Right.
nutshell,
Right.
that's kind of where
It was
God took me.
that moment on the steps. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, was there anything like in your educational background that prepared you for this, new role? Or did you just grow into it and just slowly gain that expertise?
Well, I think it's both and. I did go to college. I have my college degree, but I went to film school and I worked in the motion picture industry for
Oh,
several years. I say BC, before children, and and loved it. Had a great time. I worked in radio, I worked in television, and I worked in film. And it was really great to do all those things. I really got to network with a lot of people. I got to be kind of the salt out there and light
mm,
in a
mhm,
world that is really, really dark.
mm,
I also had the opportunity to work with some faith based companies and things like that. And
mhm,
so, how did that prepare me? Well, that prepared me because I was living a lifestyle that was very fast and very
mhm,
active.
mhm,
And I really learned quickly how to manage my time, how to network well, and to not sweat the small stuff. And
mm,
so when the time came that the Lord led me to fitness and to personal training, really came when I started to work, like I said, on my own health.
mm.
And I was approached at the YMCA, my local YMCA. I was approached by the director of the YMCA saying, Betsy, I really like your energy. Would you really think about becoming a group exercise instructor? And I was like, me? I mean, I can't even do the Macarena, Martha, without taking people out. So I'm like, how could I teach a class?
Oh,
So they had me, they actually paid for my training and they sent me to learn how to be a group fitness instructor in a resistance class. And
oh,
then I started teaching spin classes. And
mm,
then I started teaching core classes. And then I started running and I became a runner. And then I started getting certifications around running. And one day, a woman at the YMCA stopped me. And the Reader's Digest version is this. She asked me if I could go have a cup of coffee with her. And I said, sure. And so we went and we had a cup of coffee. And I'll never forget sitting in this little bakery called Ketchy Creek Bakery in Clemens, North Carolina. And we were sitting there. And she said, I wanted to talk to you because you have something that I want. And I
oh,
said, I'm sorry.
oh,
And she said, well, I've been watching you at the Y. And I used to be by you in class, but now you're teaching the classes. But there's something about what you're doing in class that I want. And I was like, really? I guess I don't understand what you mean. And she said, there's joy there that I
mm,
really want, and I
mm,
can't find it.
mm,
And it was at that moment when I went, holy cow, Lord Jesus Christ. Wow. Look at what you're doing. And me, little me. And so her and I had this beautiful faith-filled conversation. I, a Catholic, she, a non-denominational Christian. We had a
mhm,
beautiful conversation. And
mm,
it was in that conversation that the Holy Spirit gave me the overarching scripture of my life. And it's First Peter 3:15, to always be ready to give a reason for the hope that you have.
oh,
And I
beautiful.
was able to give her a reason for the hope that I had. I had shared her with her my story and why I was doing what I was doing.
Mhm,
And she was so grateful.
hmm,
And I left that coffee date and really soul searching, like, Lord, you want to do that? What? So I believe that all of that experience in the film
mhm,
business of being in
mhm,
front of people and being authentically who I am, and
mhm,
then the Lord giving me that grace to be who I am, no
mhm,
matter what. And
mhm,
right, my identity and doesn't depend on what people think of me, right? And only what the Lord thinks of me.
mhm.
And so it was at that moment where I went, okay, Lord, this is what you want from me. Yes.
Yeah.
So
Amazing.
here I am. I'm still doing it. And I'll tell you, Martha, there are days when I'm like, really, Lord, this is what you want me to keep doing?
Right, right. It sounds like your faith has been a big part of your
Mhm.
life.
Well, my faith journey really, I mean, I'm a cradle Catholic. So for those of you who are not Catholic, that means I've been Catholic all my life. And I have kind of, I did the thing in college where I just kind of was like, yeah, I'm Catholic, kind of, you know, always have been pro life. My parents were NFP instructors with
Oh,
Couple to Couple League. I know, talk about just full circle.
that's
Yeah, I know,
amazing.
isn't that crazy?
Oh,
Super great. You're super great. And so I learned, the symptothermal method when I was 17, 18 years old. Wasn't that great at it, but I did it, and
mhm,
just kept on keeping on. And so my faith journey really then as a Catholic and as a woman of God, a daughter of the King, I just through homeschooling my children in the Catholic faith, wow,
mhm, mm.
when my husband and I started doing that, a lot of things changed. We were reading the Baltimore Catechism and we looked at each other and went, wait a second. All I remember is felt butterflies and Jesus loves me. I
Oh,
don't remember any of this. And
yeah.
so we really dove into our faith. And it was our
Mhm.
children. The Lord totally used our children.
Right.
And so, the past 30 years that my husband and I have been married, and we actually met through the Holy Catholic Church. We were in leadership in our youth ministries in our diocese growing up,
Yeah.
and we met each other at a camp up in Sacramento, California. California is a really big state. For those of you may not be maybe a little geographically challenged,
Uh-huh.
and we stayed friends all through high school as these
Mm,
Catholic friends. And then my
mhm,
husband came down to Southern California to go to school, and that's when we got back in touch with each other. We'd stayed in touch pretty well throughout high
mhm,
school, but
mhm.
then in college, he asked me on a date, and I was like, "Really?"
Oh,
And then we were married in the church, and then we began our family about 3 years after we were married, and we did miscarry before we had our first son, and then our second son, and our sons are now grown. So yes,
mhm, mhm.
so my faith journey has been one of just a lot of beauty, but
Right.
also a lot of suffering.
Mm,
But our Lord has certainly
mhm,
been faithful.
mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your fertility journey. You
Mhm.
mentioned that you did have a miscarriage.
Mhm, I
Were
did.
you doing any kind of tracking at that point, charting? Was that helpful in any way?
It wasn't consistent during the
Mhm,
first few years of our marriage.
mhm,
Um, there was a lot of confusion. My husband and I were both kind of, in this place in our faith where we were so busy trying to make ends meet that we were not really focusing on our faith in that holistic way.
mm, mhm. Sure.
And were we going to mass? Yeah, not every Sunday.
Yeah.
I mean,
Sure.
transparency. I mean, come on. I
Yeah.
mean, we were working 6 days a week, 18 to
Mhm.
20 hours a day in the motion picture industry. It's very, very fast paced and
Mm,
very long hours.
yeah.
Not making excuses. I'm
Right.
just saying that is the choice we made.
That's where you
And
were. Right.
it was to our detriment because our marriage
Mm.
did suffer because after our first
Mhm.
son was born, we had a lot of issues,
Oh,
a lot of
yeah.
issues. And thanks be to God, um, we got the help that we needed.
Mm,
And the Lord really started to do some deeper work in our
mm,
marriage. And some of that was around our fertility.
mm,
And so I was, off and on with the symptothermal. I was just kind of, dabbling in it. I'd
mhm,
had the books, I'd pay attention, and I really paid attention more to my mental health and my rest because I was just so burnt out. I
right.
was just so burnt out.
That's
So I
what you
started to
need the
make some
most.
changes professionally,
Mm, mhm.
started to work from home. I was pioneer in that way
Yeah.
because not a lot of women were doing that back then.
No.
And
Right.
this might shock some of your listeners. I mean, email really wasn't a, a big thing yet.
Yeah.
And
That's right.
telecommuting, that's what we used to call it.
Yes.
telecommuting.
Yes.
I'm like
Yes.
dating myself here. But yeah, so this telecommuting. So I started doing that. And as soon as I started working from home, I started to see that work-life balance. And then the blinders really fell off. And I went,
Mm.
okay, wow, a lot of things out of order,
Mm.
a
Mhm.
lot of grasping at control, a
Oh.
lot of fear of lack. A
Mm.
lot of those kinds of things just kind of
Mhm.
started to bubble to the surface. And when you're quiet with yourself
Mm.
and you're not as busy, you can hear the Lord's voice a little better.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we were really sent on a different trajectory. The Lord started to move in really big ways. He
Mhm.
brought us back to California. At the time we were in Utah. And we were living in Utah for it was a little over 7 years.
Hmm.
And then we made our way back to California. My husband started a whole new career, got out of the motion picture industry, and we began a deeper marriage, a deeper
Mhm.
motherhood and fatherhood roles as
Mhm.
our life started to slow down a little bit.
Mhm.
And then we were near family and friends, so we had the support that we needed.
Oh.
And then we began to really roll up our sleeves and work on our marriage. And so then that's when the
Hmm.
symptothermal stuff kind of came back,
Okay.
started to really kind of dive into that. And I mean, I'll be frank, it wasn't because of anything the church was doing.
Mm.
The church wasn't talking about it. Now, my
Okay.
parents were couple to couple league, instructors, but
Mhm.
that's really all I knew about it. It wasn't being talked about from the
Yeah.
pulpit.
No. Yeah.
It There weren't books. There weren't books out there. In fact, some of my Protestant friends were a lot more natural family planning than I was,
Mm. Right.
minded, natural family planning minded,
Yes. Yes.
pro-life minded
Okay. Yeah.
than I was. And so it was a very personal journey. And then
Mhm.
when the Lord led me into this realm that I am in and have been for so many years,
Mhm.
as the fem piece kind of came on the scene, in 2018, I was invited to take the training by Patrice at our diocese, and I took it along with a friend of mine, a young woman that I had been mentoring, and I still mentor, and she's also
Mm.
a fem uh, teacher and a focus missionary now. And
Wow.
so her and I took the class together, and it was so life giving,
Hmm.
and it was so affirming of everything that the Lord had prepared for me.
Hmm.
It was so clear. It
Yeah.
was so clear, and that is a grace, Martha.
Yes.
That is
Yes.
such a grace,
Yeah.
and I know
Mhm.
that. And
Mm.
so the fem piece just kind of was a natural progression in my practice,
Right.
especially since I had been talking to women about hormone health since about 2010, 2011.
Mhm.
Not gonna lie, I'd talk to women about cortisol and their adrenals, and they looked at me like I had lobsters crawling out of my ears.
Yeah.
They were like,
Early.
"What are
You
you
were early.
talking about?"
Yes. Yeah. So, how did the hormones come into play before the fertility awareness base
Well, really
training?
from a place of stress and understanding what stress does to the body. And remember I
Mhm.
said I was really more focused on, in my own health journey, getting that rest.
Right.
And then I started to deep dive myself
Okay.
because I love to learn. And
Mm.
that's something the Lord knows. That's a
All
gift
right.
He gave me, that I love to learn. And so I would just keep deep diving.
Hmm.
And that was before we had all the things on the internet. And
Right.
so, I mean, I would go
Wow.
to the
Yeah.
library and
Look
I
at a
would,
book.
yeah, I'd actually look at a book, and then I would ask doctors and friends and counselors, like, do you know anything about cortisol? Do you have any studies that I could read? Do you have anything
Oh.
that I could? And I just started collecting information. And then it started to become something that people were talking about. And then in about 2010, 11, I started to make contacts with people around the country that were starting to talk about it.
Hmm.
And so I would just get on these little chat boards and all these things and ask questions and do all the things. And then my clients, I was seeing it before my eyes. And then we would just kind of tweak things in their diet, I would ask them to take breaks from their exercise, and then
Mm-hmm.
I'd ask them about their period. And what is that like? And what kind of things are you seeing? And, these kinds of things. And then I'd hand them a symptothermal kind of pamphlet and say, you might want to look at this. This might be something that you might be interested in. It might help your hormones. But I just left it at that because I didn't really know enough to
Mm-hmm.
teach that. And then I know my lane. I stay in my lane.
Right.
And so needless to say, then when Femme came along, I'll just never forget. I mean, that course is so excellent. So if there are women who just want personal development, it's a great course to take.
Mm-hmm.
But as a teacher, adding it to my toolbox
Right.
with women, it's just been so beautiful.
Right. And the nutrition, let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. For me as a nutrition coach, the first thing I would need to say is that to open our eyes to the fact that we live in an industrialized country. We have a food system, and this is not probably news to many of your listeners. We have a food system that is broken. And it's designed, much of the food that we're eating is designed to dissolve fast, taste good, and literally like slide down your esophagus. And in that food, it's also designed in its taste and in its texture to actually hit the dopamine center of our brain. And so now we have a country that is literally addicted to dopamine. So now think about this. So just a kind of a little bit of a thought experiment, Martha. So just hang with me here. When we're thinking about nutrition, and we're thinking about making changes in our nutrition. So maybe it's, I want to lose weight. Maybe it's, I need to have a little bit less sugar because my cycle is all wackadoo and I'm borderline insulin resistant, or my cortisol levels are so high. I'm so stressed out that I'm not eating, and all these types of things, or I'm emotionally eating. I'm eating a lot all the time. Or maybe I'm approaching menopause and my leptin response is blunted. And I need to be paying attention to what I'm eating. But man, this tastes good. And dopamine hit, dopamine hit, dopamine hit. So dopamine is that hormone from that center of our brain that says pleasure. That's nice. That's good. It's a hit every time we look at our phone and we get a notification, right?
Yeah.
So we're addicted to that. And so now think about women who want to make a change in their nutrition. We have to address that before we even start to address the nutrient density in our food. So you can see that, yes, the food system is broken. Yeah. But in that brokenness, it has actually created an environment in our physical body that is disordered. And so now this is what I focus on in my coaching practice is bringing order back to our self-care. There's that intentional, sustainable, integrated mindset. So what are some of the things that you can, or a thing that you can do today to address that dopamine hit?
That's a
Right?
good question. Yes.
And so maybe for some women, it's, well, I'm going to write down every single time I want to go have something to eat. Like I'm going to write down what time it is and I'm just going to track it and see. And then reminding my clients, the women that I have the privilege to work with, is this is data. This is not a judgment.
Yes.
It's data. Log everything you eat for a day and then look at it and say, how can I do a little bit better with my vegetables? How can I do a little bit better with less sugar? How can I do a little bit better with maybe not so much cheese? Right? Just taking a very practical look at it,
Right.
non-judgmental, because food, sorry, neutral thing. No food is evil, right? It becomes evil when we allow it to do what it does to our meaning we eat it. Like when we make that choice.
Yeah. Yeah.
So helping women understand their sphere of control, what's in their control, what's
Mm-hmm.
kind of in their control, and what is out of their control.
Mm-hmm.
That can really help a woman make a better decision about her nutrition, which we know affects her fertility.
Mm-hmm.
We know this. This is scientific data. We know
Absolutely.
this.
Right. Right.
So that, and then with that mindset, Martha, so now you have this mindset, this healthier mindset,
Mm-hmm.
cortisol levels start to go down, right? We're not as stressed out over every meal, right? Our spiritual life gets a little bit better
Mm.
because we're not like twitching because I need more caffeine or I need more sugar or I need more, right?
Right.
We're starting to turn a little bit out of ourselves and say, okay, Lord,
Mm-hmm.
I really want that extra muffin, but I know I don't need it.
Right.
Give me the grace to make it through this next 5 minutes that I
Mm-hmm.
really want this muffin. This muffin isn't going to do me any favors, but Lord, you will do me a lot of favors.
Mm.
Yes, that integrated Catholic wellness makes us those integrated Catholic women who then can live more virtuous lives. The
Mm.
virtues really come alive in our lives. I mean,
Mm.
that's what the church teaches, is that living a virtuous life is living the good life. We understand what truly is good and we learn what is truly not good.
Mm.
And we know that through living the good life, we grow in holiness. So there's so many little components, like I said,
Mm.
these deeper health pieces, this
Right.
self knowledge that many of the great saints in Holy Mother of the Church, they talk about that, is
Mm-hmm.
knowing yourself,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
When we know ourselves, we can conquer ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that's that grand humility, right? The
Mm.
greatest place of humility is to be able to conquer ourselves.
Yes.
Um, with the Lord's help, of course, but we
Sure.
are called to choose. We are called to choose. We have free
Mm.
will, for
Right.
sure.
Right. So over the years, I'm sure you've seen a lot of trends in
Oh yeah.
wellness and fitness and exercise and health and
Mhm.
nutrition.
Oh yeah.
Um, uh, what did that look like for you over the years?
Well, I will tell you, as a new coach all those years ago, I would get so excited about the next new thing.
Mm.
And so what I would do is I would try the next new thing and I would see if this would help a client. Would this be sustainable?
Mm.
Would this be simple? Especially when my average client has 6 children. So it doesn't make any sense for me to tell a mother of 6,
Mm.
okay, well, I want you to eat, chicken and kale for the next 4 weeks, and you're going to need to make, 3 different meals of the,
Mm.
that's
Mm.
ludicrous.
Mhm.
That's ludicrous.
Mhm.
And so I would test out all of these, oh my gosh, I remember when paleo came on the scene, right?
Mm. Sure.
And then there was just like this shaming if you didn't do certain things. And early in the paleo days, they had cheat days.
Oh,
I take offense to that language. Wow. So I'm going to cheat myself for a couple days.
yeah.
How does that work in your mindset?
Mm. Mhm.
This idea of cheating. We're called to be honest and true. We're not called to cheat. And so if I'm making a conscious decision to have a piece of birthday cake, I'm making a conscious decision to have a piece of birthday cake. And
Mhm.
is the piece of birthday cake going to get me to my goals? Not if I have birthday cake every day,
Right.
but today for my son's 7th birthday, I'm going to have a piece of cake,
Mm. Mhm. Has to be
right?
practical.
Be
Yeah.
practical, right?
Right.
Exactly. And ordered in our thinking.
Mm.
And that
Mhm.
all or nothing is where the devil wants us.
Right.
Is he wants us there. And so with all of these, many of these trends in fitness
Mhm.
and in
Mhm.
wellness, we're really kind of forced into an all or nothing mindset, and
Mm.
it's dangerous. It's
Hmm.
dangerous.
How so?
I
How so?
Yeah. Do you understand what I mean? Like it's dangerous. Like if we fall off the wagon, then we're failures.
Okay. Got it.
And it's not this temperate kind of idea around it. So like if I
Mhm.
want to adopt a ketogenic diet, which we now know in the science can help some women in their fertility. We know that. Is it good for every woman? No. I did the ketogenic diet. I gained 15 pounds in 1 month.
Mm.
Clearly not a food plan for me.
Hmm.
Okay.
Right.
So every person is different.
Right.
When we start to be a one size fits all
Right.
mindset,
Mm-hmm.
it's dangerous, especially when it comes to our fertility. How come my fertility journey isn't like hers?
Mm-hmm.
I am doing all the things,
Yeah. Yeah.
and my husband and I are having problems conceiving,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like that is just scary. That is a scary, scary road to go down.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I've been seeing lately in the health and wellness world is really some idolatry when it comes to, am I getting enough minerals? Well, I want to have this test run. Should I have that test run? Should I do that? Like we're looking for a diagnosis,
Mm-hmm.
and there's not always a diagnosis.
Hmm.
Most of the time it comes back to, are we doing the basics? Are we doing the basics? Are we eating well, more nutrient dense, a little more fiber and protein forward? Are we hydrating? Are we going to bed at a reasonable time? Or are we scrolling? Are we, right? Are we keeping our houses tidy and making our bed every day? You're like, what does that have to do with wellness? That's executive function.
Mm.
That's basic mindset stuff.
Yeah.
If we're living in a chaotic environment, that will affect our deeper health, which
Sure.
will affect our cycle
Mm.
because it affects our stress
Mm-hmm. Right.
and our dopamine, right?
Right.
All of those different things that we have to consider. And I know for some women who might be listening to this, or that it's like a fire hose. It's like, oh my gosh,
Yes.
so many things. And
Yeah.
so I want to bring
Very
women
hard.
kind of back to that
Yeah.
place of
Mm-hmm.
that one thing
Right.
that you could do today that would help your fertility and fitness and wellness journey. Do that one thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Just do that one thing. And then celebrate that you did that one thing, because
Right.
that's how habits are built.
Right. So, Betsy, how hard is it to really change habits? How do you help and coach women in making those lasting habit changes?
Yeah. Well, it takes time. It takes time. It takes spiritual and mental fortitude.
Mm.
Um, what I help women do, I usually coach women one-on-one for 9 months. So my program lasts 9 months. The program is similar for each woman, but not the same, because every woman has different goals and different needs. And as we work through those 9 months, we work on those small changes
Mm-hmm.
and we build on the small changes. Some women, Martha, come to me and they need help getting some better sleep and understanding where their hormones are. Maybe they're women that are in perimenopause
Mm-hmm.
or premenopause, or maybe they're, I don't know, 9 or 10 months from their last period. And they're like, okay, menopause is coming. Like my 1 year date is almost here, you
Sure.
know, and they want to get their house in order.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And
Mm-hmm.
so we'll systematically go through the things that are the most important to her.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'll look at her daily nutrition of what she's eating already. We're not going to overhaul it. We're just going to look at breakfast, make it a little bit better. We're going to look at lunch, make it a little bit better, and look at dinner and make it a little bit better. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to help her and equip her with the tools that she needs to do those things well and
Mm-hmm.
do them consistently.
Right.
I didn't say perfectly.
Right. And how important is that one-on-one accompaniment to
Um,
success?
well, I think it's important for many women. I think because we are relational. That's how the Lord designed us. And we're very, very relational and we receive, right?
Mm.
And so the women that I work with, we really work on that area of being receptive to the change,
Mm.
to the changes sometimes that we need to make,
Mhm.
to learning about themselves individually, and then learning more about God. Of course, I think it was Saint Mother Teresa who said, "The more we know ourselves, the more we know God. The more we know God, the more we know ourselves." I'm sure there's many saints who said that, but that is such a good mindset to have. Is that I am on this journey to learn more about myself, so that I can learn more about God. I'm learning more about God, so I can learn more about myself. And so, in this one-on-one time, Martha, they're learning how to trust the Lord, trust themselves, trust the process. Because sometimes it takes longer than 9 months to move the needle on the scale. Sometimes it takes longer than 9 months for a woman's cycle to start to become a little bit healthier, especially if she's has a diagnosis like PCOS, or she's got some kind of hormonal imbalance. Maybe it's insulin resistance. Maybe it's hyperprolactemia. She's got some things that she's working through, and it takes time.
Sure.
And that's what our culture thinks we don't have is time.
Right.
Everything's got to be quick
right now. Yeah.
And that's those circling back to those wellness fads and trends, is we have this mindset of, oh, that's the next best thing. And so we're grasping. And instead of noticing and naming, notice what it is that I need to work on, name it, and then move forward. What do I need to do a little bit better? And do I need help in that? And some women, they reach out to me.
Right.
They need help.
Right. So how does motivation make a difference? And what should that motivation be? You touched on that just a little.
I appreciate you asking that motivation question, because that comes up a lot. Motivation and accountability. Motivation really starts with action. Action motivates a person. And so when I'm working with women, whether it's they're just starting to chart, right? Helping them find that habit, build that habit. And I give them little techniques and things to do to build that habit. And then I check in with them, or they check in with me. And it's like, okay, how's it going? How's that momentum? It's like, wow, when I put that habit with this other habit, I haven't missed a day of charting. Right. And then there's momentum that motivates, because then they start to see their pattern.
Right.
And then, so the action has motivated. And then the accountability piece, that's an interesting word, because our culture has made that more penal, meaning like, oh no, I have my session with Betsy and I'm going to have to tell her that I ate all the cupcakes, as if I'm going to get mad. Like, no, like she's not she's accountable to herself and to her Lord. She's not accountable to me. Right. I mean, that's accountability really is the grace to be able to own our actions, to own our decisions.
Right.
Whether or not they're getting us to our goals. Right.
Right.
You still got to own it. Like, I got to own it that kind of messed up there. Had 2 helpings of that, and I really wasn't hungry anymore, and now I'm paying for it.
So when you work with young women, what are their concerns? Because it's obviously going to be different than a woman who, is perimenopausal. So,
right.
So as an example,
yeah.
What are they most concerned with in your experience?
In my experience, in working with girls through our Teen Femme program, our Teen Femme education program, the first and biggest concern is that the moms want their daughters to know more about their cycle than they knew when they were their age. Okay, so that's the first thing. But what ends up happening is some of the girls come kicking and screaming, I don't want to take that class. Why are you making me take that class? It's kind of embarrassing. We're going to say things like period and, cervical mucus and like, stop saying that, like all the things. And so, but then once we get into the subject matter and we start talking about it, and, when I teach it, I mean, I've worked with middle school and teen girls for many, many years through other nonprofit work that I do through the church with Fidelis and all these things.
Mhm.
And I can meet them where they're at. But as our Lord tells us, you meet them where they're at, but you don't leave them there.
Mm.
So I keep the bar pretty high. And
Mm.
I believe that when the bar is high like that, the girls, they do every time they rise to it. So what are they concerned about?
Right.
They're concerned about, first, am I doing it right? So they really want to learn how to chart correctly, which is interesting.
Mhm.
They also want to learn about choices and their hormones. So what do I mean by that?
Mhm.
Meaning they're going, I feel so weird at this time of the month. I don't understand why I get so grouchy.
Right.
How come my outfit that fit me 2 weeks ago doesn't fit me anymore?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm kind of embarrassed when I go to school and I have my period because I'm afraid that I'm going to bleed through my clothes.
Mm. Mm.
Or I don't like how my skin feels, right?
Right.
Or I'm tired all the time. So they come with kind of this barrier of I don't want to do this. And then as we get into the subject matter and I meet them where they're at and not leave them there,
Mm.
they start to really pay attention
Mhm.
to how they feel, what they see, and what they're feeling throughout their cycle.
Right.
And it's really, really beautiful. And I think the biggest thing for me, Martha, because I'm a mom, um, and I don't have living daughters, and have done a lot of work with girls. But what's beautiful for me to see is how the moms now have a connection to their daughter in a real
Mm.
concrete way.
Yes.
I'm an advocate for the girls to be going back to mom and saying, I need your help.
Yeah.
Or this is how I'm feeling. Did
Right.
you feel this way?
Right.
You
Yeah.
know,
If anyone can understand, it would be a mom. Right.
yeah. I mean, and I think that's kind of when the scales fall off the eyes of some of the
Mm.
girls is that they go,
Mhm.
wait a second. Oh yeah, she she's not my enemy. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of girls who have great relationships with their moms.
Sure.
There are, but they're by and large, they're not talking to their moms about these things. They're talking to
Mm.
other girls.
Right.
And
And
if
they
other
don't know anything
girls,
either.
right. Well, and Martha right now, they're talking to other girls that are 12 and 13 years old and they've been prescribed the pill.
Mm. Yeah. Right.
And so our 6th, 7th, and 8th grade daughters
Mm.
are hearing about the pill. And for us to think that they're not, that's us burying our heads in the sand.
Right. Right.
We live in an age where our children are being forced to grow up and adults are allowed to act like children. It's not fair.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let us begin to put those girls before us.
Right.
I heard a quote many years ago. I think it was attributed to St. Augustine, is that we have time for the things we love.
Mm.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So if we truly love the Lord,
Mm.
if we truly love our lives, then we have time for those things.
Right.
And that's where, fertility awareness comes in too, right? Is having the time to invest in either learning a fertility awareness method,
Right.
applying it, and charting it, that daily charting habit.
Mm-hmm.
It's a habit.
Yeah.
And it's information that you actually can't unlearn.
Right. All righty. Oh, it was great speaking with you, Betsy. You are
Me
just a
too.
font of wellness, nutrition, fertility.